Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. Now, my guests this morning are Therese Conway, who is the CEO of the credit union loan for farmers called Cultivate. I'm also joined by Fran Igo, who is with the Law Pro here in County Tipperary, and he's talking about an event that's taking place in Cahir House on the 12th of May. And finally, my guest this morning is Grania Dwyer, and Grania is the current president of the Nuffield Foundation here in Ireland, and they have a big conference taking place on the 22nd of May, the title of which is Food Security. My first guest this morning, listeners, is Conor Kavanagh from Teagasc, and Conor is a tillage advisor, so it's some time since we've had a chat about tillage. Good morning, Conor, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim, and good morning to your listeners. It's great to be back on the programme.
Okay, since we were last talking, how has planting of spring crops progressed, and what crops are being planted at the moment, Conor?
Yeah, I suppose, Jim, as all your listeners are aware, we've had a particularly tough spring with February and March coming particularly wet, and even a lot of April has been wet apart from the last kind of 2 weeks. And I suppose a lot of farmers would have got a welcome drop of rain there last Thursday. In general, spring barley planting has almost been completed. It's probably completed maybe 2 weeks in South Tipperary, but in North Tipperary it will be a small bit later, and it's only been completed last week. Spring beans is probably planted. Maybe most of the beans went in there at some stage in early April, and the remaining went in the second half of April, which is slightly late for beans. But depending on the weather over the summer, it could be manageable. And also, there's a good deal of maize and beet still to go in the coming weeks. So traffic will be busy on a lot of roads around the county with farmers rushing to get in the last of the maize and some of the beet.
And would they be the last things to be planted this spring, or you could nearly call it summer at this stage, only if we're not getting summer weather? You're taking that beet and beans would be the last ones to be put in.
No, it would be beet and maize, Jim.
Beet and maize, sorry, my mistake.
No, they would generally be the last crops to go in around the county, and maybe some areas of potatoes are still to go in as well, but wouldn't be a massive crop in County Tipperary. Would be potatoes, and I suppose maize going in after today. I suppose going into May would be probably going in without the need for plastic.
And tell me this, is there much, I've done a fair bit of travelling recently, and I haven't seen any maize planted anywhere in the county.
Yeah, no, it's probably only after starting in the last week, Jim, so you probably wouldn't see it. And on some of the favourable sites there, some south-facing sites and say warm soil, a lot of farmers would be putting in maize without plastic. So I think the plastic has nearly been outpriced. It's almost up on €300 an acre to put the plastic down for the last couple of years. So I think a lot of farmers are now planting maize without the plastic. Some of the new maize varieties are well able to go in the Irish climate without plastic.
Yeah, they're hardier. Now, what about winter crops? For the past, I suppose we're over the hump here as well. I was definitely observing rapeseed, lovely and flowering 2 weeks ago, and it's probably dying off now. How has rapeseed, how has it performed this early spring?
Yeah, obviously rape has actually done quite well. It's tillered out well and branched out. As you've probably seen, lovely yellow flowers there for the last couple of weeks. Which would be quite good. But yeah, crops are generally looking quite well, and the gate is closed in all IFeed rape crops now. So it's just a matter of hanging on until harvest. In terms of winter barley, then, which would probably be the largest area of crop grown winter crop grown in the county. Winter barley, some of the earlier varieties are starting to head out already, which is probably a week to 10 days earlier than where it would usually head out. So farmers, it's vitally important to maybe get on the final fungicide at the on-emerging stage, which is kind of when the field nearly starts looking like a paint bush. You see some fields around the county now with the kind of paint bushes, or the awns will be blowing in the wind. So that's the kind of paint bush stage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's key for the final fungicide to go on at that stage for ram malaria control. Going on when the head has fully emerged, you're only getting a small percentage of control in ram malaria, where when you go on at the on-emerging stage, you're getting almost full control of ram malaria. It's a much better timing.
And what about winter wheat? There didn't much go in, I'd say.
Winter wheat, the area winter wheat has possibly gone back slightly on previous years. I suppose possibly largely down to the cost of nitrogen fertilizer and also the cost of some fungicide programs going on winter wheat. But there is a bit of winter wheat across the county, and it's almost that, I suppose, flag leaf emergence in a lot of crops at the minute. So that will be getting it's second from final fungicide now in the coming weeks. And I suppose it's important for farmers to actually get out and walk the crops and assess the level of disease in the crops before going with the fungicide.
Okay, you mentioned already we had a very wet day on Thursday last, and plenty of showers on Friday, and by the looks of it we're going to get some more showers today. This recent rain, will that change the approaches that farmers will make towards managing their spring sowings?
Yeah, so as I said, almost all the spring barley in the county is in at this stage, and I suppose a lot of farmers will probably say wanted a drop of rain to just get it up and get it away, because there was an east wind there for the last couple of weeks. It was quite cold and harsh on crops. So it will farmers would be advised as soon as the tram lines are visible to get out the main split of nitrogen on the spring barley. So generally farmers would have put down a compound at sowing time. So basically something along the lines of your 10-5-25, and they'd bring up to the total amount of nitrogen, then maybe up to 100 to 120 units of nitrogen on their spring barley. And that would all want to be going out when the tram lines are visible, particularly in malting barley, getting the nitrogen out as soon as the tram lines are visible. And even for feed barley, I would be going with the full amount of nitrogen in the next few days, as if we did get a dry month in May and June, it mightn't get fully taken up by the plant.
Of course. You mentioned beans earlier in this interview, Conor. There has been an increase in the amount of beans sown for 2026. Why is that? What's contributing to the fact that more acreage or more hectares are under beans than previous years?
Yes, there has been a small increase, especially across Tipperary. It's actually quite unusual, Jim, for a year that did go late, and beans would usually like to be planted by the middle of March, but there were still farmers planting beans up until the last weeks in April, actually. So a lot of farmers are putting in beans as a break crop. You can grow beans with no chemical nitrogen, and if you have a good supply of farmyard manure or slurry, you can grow them without any chemical fertilizer at all. And most farmers are only going maybe 2 bags of something like 0730 or 01020 down the spout. So it's a much cheaper crop in terms of fertilizer to grow. It acts as a very good break crop. And also, I suppose there's a pretty lucrative protein payment there for the last number of years of between €5 and €550 per hectare to grow beans. So that's probably a big pull factor. And it's vitally important that I suppose Ireland has its own homegrown protein source to be used in animal feed.
Right, okay. I suppose the other crop, which I suppose is the main crop in Ireland, and that's grass. And grass will hit the peak in the coming days, definitely by the middle of May. And if farmers have too much grass or have a surplus of grass, how should they manage that at this particular time, Conor?
Yeah, well, particularly on dairy and dry stock farms, I suppose a lot of farmers didn't get out to grass as early as other years, and there is, I suppose, paddocks are starting to get quite heavy. Farmers should all be well into their second rotation now on dairy farms, and any paddocks in the first rotation now should definitely be taken out for bales, and also any paddocks that are maybe getting strong on the second rotation should be also taken out for bales, as farmers, I suppose farmers want to be going into the ideal covers of between 12 and 1,500 kilos of dry matter per hectare, whereas if you're going above that, you're getting poor utilisation of the grass, but you're also hitting the bulk tank in terms of the fat and protein percentages in the bulk tank. So I would be advising farmers to maybe carry out, dry stock and dairy farmers, carry out farm walks in the coming days, especially after rain, and any paddocks that are possibly getting too strong, whip them out for bales now. Don't wait for them to bulk up. Whip them out for bales now, and basically you'll have quality aftergrass coming back within 2 to 3 weeks due to the influx in growth.
Rightio. Before I let you go, any important dates or deadlines coming up? I suppose the big one is the BIS. We know that's coming up for the 15th of May, but anything else?
Yeah, as you said, Jim, the BIS deadline is the 15th of May, and I suppose farmers are slightly behind this year. There's a lot of applications still to be put in for BIS for the single farm payments or the BIS application. So I would encourage all your listeners to basically phone their advisor, and if they haven't done so already, to make an appointment to get the BIS application done, as the last week can be quite hectic and the system can often crash, or there can be influxes on the system in the last week. So I'd advise farmers to phone up and get the BIS application done next week. And also, I suppose, just in terms of the 2 farm walks coming up there, there's the NDC Milk Quality Award winners, the Ryan family and the Sheen 9 are having a big farm walk on Wednesday the 24th of June at 11:30. So that's the day for the dairy for all Grafton farmers across the county, beef and dairy, and it's a day for the whole family there on Wednesday the 24th of June, and the Ryan family farm in the Sheen 9. And just in terms for a date for the tillage calendar is next Wednesday, the 6th of May, which is Wednesday the 6th is next Wednesday at 9:30 in the morning. We're having a crop walk on Michael Hogan's farm in Ballinderry Park, Borflakane, and we're going through all I suppose all agronomy in terms of all aspects of growing crops for the next month and a half on tillage farms, and that's on Michael Hogan's farm in Borflakane. And the air code for that for any tillage farms in the county they're welcome to attend is E45 YN81.
Okay, well look at Conor, thanks very much for joining us this morning and giving us all that information. That, listeners, was Conor Kavanagh, who is a tillage advisor here in the county with Teagasc. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Therese Conway, and Therese is the CEO of Cultivate, and Cultivate is the credit unions. It's their loan program for farmers, and you may or you may not be aware that last week was Cultivate Week, and unfortunately I couldn't fit in Therese and the team because I was already full. But this week I'm not full, and I hope Therese will be able to tell me all about how Cultivate Week went, and then remind you, the listeners, particularly my farming listeners, what they have to offer with regard to loans to the various credit unions across the country that implement the Cultivate loan. Good morning, Therese, and thanks for joining us again. It's a year since you were on.
Good morning, Jim, and very delighted, glad to be back, and in this fine weather as well.
Okay, thanks be to God, it's fine. We've seen enough of dark days, so we are. And okay, how did Cultivate Week pan out?
It went really well. I'm very glad to say National Cultivate Week is something that we've been celebrating now for a number of years, and we now have credit unions across the country, so in every county in Ireland, are now offering Cultivate. We're in 192 branches nationwide, and they came out in force in tractors. We had petting farms, we had guessed the number of calf nuts, local mart visits. So across the country, we had credit unions engaging with their farming communities, their local communities, and it was a really great week. And happily, the sun shone.
Right, okay, the sun shone. But more importantly, you know, when you have a week like this and you promote it, do you feel that it has been successful as far as getting the Cultivate message out to the farming community?
Absolutely, and I suppose at this stage the Cultivate message is very strong. We're 9 years, it was 2017 that 4 credit unions in Galway set up Cultivate, which was a dedicated farm loan for credit union members. And there's been a really strong response from credit unions and from farmers. And as I say, we're now in every county. We're in 192 branches, and over 200 million in loan applications have gone through since Cultivate started. And that strong response from farmers is continuing. So yes, I think the Cultivate message is landing very strongly.
I said there, in my introduction, I think you need to remind farmers, particularly farm families, what Cultivate loans are for, and I suppose what is the maximum loan that somebody can take out as far as a Cultivate loan is concerned.
Yeah, so a Cultivate loan is a very straightforward loan dedicated to farmers. It is at 6.5% unsecured up to 100,000. Each individual credit union, they may or may not offer up to that amount. It may be smaller credit union or a set credit union may have 50,000 as their limit, 75 or 100. But it's the same rate across the country, whether I'm in Donegal, Kerry or Cavan. It's that rate. It's a competitive rate. It's unsecured, and it's a local, fast, flexible and personal. All of what people know and expect from their credit union, and farmers are responding to, and Cultivate continues to grow in popularity. What the loan can be used for, as I say, it's unsecured, so it's being used for multiple. Stocking and working capital is the most popular. Then farm buildings, equipment, tractors, doing work to land or that. So really, anything that a farmer needs to borrow for, that's what Cultivate is set up for.
In the number of years since it started, the amount that you can loan out to farmers has increased considerably.
Absolutely, and that's in response to, I suppose, unfortunately, for the farming community, rising costs. I'm married to a farmer myself. But I think despite those rising costs, there's also been rising profits in beef. Dairy's had good years on that. So across the country, we are seeing farmers, they are continuing to invest in their farms and very committed to farming and to continuing that. So we've seen credit unions respond with an increase in the size of the loan that they will offer, and we're also seeing an increase in the size of the loan that farmers are borrowing. And it's the average loan is now just under 40,924 was the average loan to farmers in Cultivate last year, over 80 months, so just under the 7 years. So we are seeing that increase. But also it's a sign, I suppose, of investment and commitment by farmers in their farm.
And have you found that farmers are particularly good at paying down loans after that, once they've got them?
Well, I suppose at a 7-year term, it's up to 10 years. So yes, they're paying them back probably a bit earlier, but credit unions are very, very good at working with their farmers, with their members. So they'll put the term out to make sure that the farmer can meet the repayments and get the loan. And if the farmer needs flexibility, they will work with them. And if that means there's no penalties, there's no interest charges or that by paying back early. But similarly, lots of farmers, the loan, it may show up as being paid back early, but it's because they've actually topped it up. So that 7-year-old tractor has been replaced by a newer model, maybe not brand new, but a newer model. So that works very well. We would see in a lot of the credit unions in Cultivate, you will have farmers coming back and repeat lending.
And is it relationship that the farmer has with his credit union, or is it the rate of interest at 6.5% that makes it easier for the farmer, or is the farmer more likely to come to you based on one of the two of those things?
Yeah. Well, at 6.5%, it's not the lowest rate because there are headline rates, but there are often terms and conditions, and it's for some green purposes or that. But at 6.5% for an unsecured farm loan, that is for whatever purpose you need it on the farm, it's a competitive rate. But certainly what we are hearing and what we do know from credit unions is that personal relationship, being able to walk in, meet somebody who knows about farming, is from your local community, wants to lend out their credit unions money. We're not-for-profit organisations. So the loans staff, they are really trying to get loans across the line for farmers and work with them. And that has been hugely successful, and the Cultivate numbers are testament to that.
Right. Now, getting back to the 6.5%, is that on a reducing loan? And in other
Yeah,
words, yeah,
yes,
that
yes.
if you have half the loan
As
paid
you're
off, you're only paying 6.5% of, we'd say, half of 50,000, which is
yeah.
25,000.
Yes, so it's a reducing daily
Right.
balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should mention as well that there are credit unions also offering secured Cultivate loans. Not all of our credit unions, but a number of them are offering loans at 5.25% for secured farm loans. So if you have a larger capital investment or that's up to 300,000 if you're purchasing land or the like, and that's also being offered.
Well, that seems to be a very good investment if somebody is buying land and then taking out a loan from the credit union at 5.5% or whatever rate lower than the 6.5 anyway.
Yeah, 5.25, but there is security required for
Yeah,
that.
I know. You know, it's absolutely fantastic that farmers can get unsecured loans up to 100,000, depending on depending on the whatever that particular credit union they are borrowing from may have a lower threshold. But you know, it's there and it's available, and it's great to see after 7.5 or 8 years that you know, Cultivate, as far as we now know from you, thanks very much, has been well received and is growing every year on year.
Absolutely. And I suppose, it's all about competition. So the more options that farmers have, and I suppose credit unions, we have that traditional branch network. I'm actually down in Arklow this evening, and I was travelling over from Gertrude College, so travelling through Carlow and different counties. We had Cultivate training today in Gertrude College, and driving through small towns and villages and seeing the different credit unions. That branch network is so important to farmers to be able to go in, speak to somebody locally. That means a lot, and we can see that coming through on the Cultivate loan.
Okay, one last question to you. I'm a farmer. I'm not a credit union member.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a loan?
You absolutely can. To become a credit union member is now a very straightforward process. So you can contact your local credit union, inquire about a Cultivate loan, what amount you're thinking of, what it is you're looking for, and getting the loan process and becoming a member can be done hand in hand. And there isn't that you have to have so much in savings or so many weeks saved or that. That is the old-fashioned way. But now you can walk in as a farmer to your credit union, you can set up an account and get a Cultivate loan and do that straight away.
Okay, Therese, thanks very much for joining us this morning and giving the listeners, and particularly the farmer listeners, that there is loans out there that can be got, that you can call into your credit union. You don't have to be a member the day you call in, and credit unions are prepared to give you, the farmer, a Cultivate loan to get you over whatever hump you have at the moment.
Absolutely. And thanks very much, Jim. Appreciate it.
That, listeners, was Therese Conway, who is the CEO of Cultivate. Great. Listeners, you may or you may not know that there is a very important event happening in Cahir House Hotel on the 12th of May between 7 and 8:30. It is an event, the title of which is Protecting and Restoring Tipperary's Natural Waters. And with me to tell me all about it and what farmers should be doing and what non-farmers should be doing to protect our natural waters, I have Fran Igo from Lawpro. Lawpro is the local authority's waters programme, and I'm quite sure Fran will be his usual self, telling us all the things we should be doing to protect our water and to protect nature. Good morning, Fran, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Jim, and good morning to your listeners.
Okay, Fran, this event in Cahir.
Okay, what it's about is it's an event to have a conversation with people who are local to the area. We're focusing on water quality, on what water quality is like in the municipal district area. So we're looking at the area around Tipperary town, up towards Cabot White, across the Care and over to Cashel, that general area, and down to Burn Court further on south as well. So you're looking at parts of the River Suir, the River Ara, and also the Carnahalia, which would be part of the Mulcair River, the upper reaches. So what we're doing is we're looking at the water quality and then talking to people about, about the river in general, and then about where there's issues. We're trying to figure out, if there are issues, what can we do about it? And underpinning all of this and informing all this is what we call Ireland's River Basin Management Plan. And in that plan, there's a lot of science behind it. But basically, the Environmental Protection Agency and other agencies like, say, for example, Tipperary County Council and Inland Fisheries Ireland and the other, scientists involved have done a lot of work, including the Geological Survey of Ireland, looking at groundwater, looking at the character of the rivers, because every river is different, even every section of a river is different when you think about it, and how the water moves across the landscape, and then what the water quality is like. And they've mapped all that out. There's a whole map that's there, and you can access all the information on a website called catchments.ie. That's catchments.ie. And in that, then, we look at that further, and our job in LawPro is to work with all the key stakeholders or actors in the area, and that includes community groups, the local authority, engineers, planners, everybody working with the local authority, and obviously the farming community and people involved in forestry and any other industry that might be relevant to the rivers in the area in question. And a lot of what we do in LawPro is we link in with the public. So we've already done consultations with the public on this stuff. So we have a good sense as to what the public want. We all want clean drinking water, for example. That's obvious. But there's also other, people have other aspirations and ambitions. If you think about, for example, in Clonmel, you've got St. Patrick's Well, the Holy Wells. Water means different things, and culturally it's really important to us. So what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, how can we protect what we have, and restore where we need to restore the water quality back to a standard that's acceptable for everybody. And the EU sets those standard levels. So it's all based on science. And then our scientists go in and we work with the various people on the ground. So as I said, we could be working with the industry, we could be working with a wastewater treatment plant, we could be working with people with septic tanks, or we could be working with the farming community. And the farming community, as you know, is quite broad, because everything from dairying to tillage to, beef, forestry and so on. So we're working with everybody. And the idea is to work with everybody and bring everybody along and see if we can come up with, what is the story of River Ara, what's important about it, where does it need help, for example, and the same with the other rivers, and then what we could do about it. And that's what the night's about. So basically, to have that conversation, we'll explain the maps and the data, let's say, in a simple, easy-to-access form, and then we're inviting people in to have a conversation, tell us more about their local knowledge, bring it forward, and then together we'll try and come up with some solutions.
And Fran, it's for a wide number of people, but primarily, I suppose, this particular programme goes out to farmers. And we know that there is this new programme, Farming for Water. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's getting on?
Yeah, that was a new programme that was put in, and we're running this. We had to apply for it as part of an EU project. So we made the application as in LawPro. We teamed up with Dairy Industry Ireland, so the major co-ops, and also Teagasc, and the what's called the ASSET programme, the advisory programme that was set up to support sustainable management around water within Teagasc. It's a free advisory and voluntary process. So we developed that with our partners, and then worked with the Department of Agriculture and with the Department of Housing, who have responsibility over water, and came up with the programme. So the way we designed it is that there's, of the money coming from Europe and Ireland, all the money goes to the farmers, every single penny. So the 50 million goes in, and then we're leveraging different, resources of the state to deliver. So, for example, the Farmer Advisory Service, and similarly with regards to the research piece and all that, and administration that's done separately to the Department of Housing. So that, we're very conscious that 50 million goes to the farmers. And the way it's designed is that basically for phosphorus and sediment type measures, let's say, we're following the rain across the farm. So the idea is the farmer advisor goes in, talks to the farmer, and then co-designs what needs to be done. So obviously there's a compliance team that's a given that people are going to make their efforts to be compliant. That's a separate thing. They have enough storage and all that type of stuff. But then every farm is going to be leaky no matter what you do. So in terms of risk, and it varies depending on your soil type. It varies on the type of enterprise you have. It varies on the slope of your land, for example, how close you are to the river and all that type of stuff. So we work on a planning process called the Rainwater Management Plan, and that then identifies types of measures that can be put in, for example, riparian buffers, which is basically leaving a bit of a gap between the river and the tillage field, or putting in a hedgerow, or putting in a wetland, whatever it is, and then the farmer gets paid for that. They get paid for doing the plan with the advisor. They get paid for, to get involved in training. They get there's payments for slurry testing, that type of stuff. And then on the nitrate side, we look at the nitrogen use efficiency. Can we make the efficiency more efficient on the farm? That saves the farmer money, but also obviously we have less nitrogen leaching off the land. And from the point of view of the nitrogen in particular, that's a real issue in terms of not so much in Tipperary, but it becomes an issue when the nitrates hit the sea. So, for example, nitrates is not really a problem in the fresh water, say, in River Shore, but as it travels down into the estuary and into, say, off Waterford, and where you have shellfish production and stuff, and swimming and bathing and all that, it becomes an issue there because nitrogen is a limiting factor. So the EIP works with the farmers across all of those different areas, and we work out, we've all these different maps we work off from the EPA. Are you in a nitrate, let's say, risky area, or is it phosphorus, or is sediment, whatever it is? And then we co-design the plan with the farmer. So the farmer owns the plan and very much centred in the whole process. And it's kind of done in a very simple way. And the payments follow from that. So it's quite a unique approach. It's very targeted. And we're finding that the scheme is very popular.
Okay, you mentioned earlier in the programme river catchment areas. Now, I know there's a little bit of talk about a project about river catchment, and that is maybe looking at the catchment, which would be the three sisters, the Barrow, the Nore and the Shore. Are we anyway down the line with getting that kind of a project, particularly with those three rivers?
Yeah, well, in the river basin management planning system, so the plan itself, so we're now in what we call the third cycle, so it goes in every 6 years. So we in LawPro would work with all the different agencies. So I'd work with over 26 agencies. We have various committees. You could have up to 70 people in the room from, the different agencies, and the ag, for example, the dairy co-ops will be involved in that as well. So we're at a point now where we're moving towards what we call catchment plans. So there's sectoral plans. So you can imagine each sector, like, for example, agriculture, they produce their sector plan. Ishgaren have produced their sector plan. And then the next phase is, that's where we are at the moment, is to come up with these catchment plans. So the idea is to break it down into the Shore, the Barrow, the Nore, and so on, Slaney over in Wexford, whatever, to work out what is going on and needs to be done in those areas. Because if you think about it, depending on where you are in the river system, you're going to have different types of farming. You could have sheep farming in the uplands. You have tillage maybe on flat ground. You've got maybe good dairy and where there's free draining soils and so on. So it's a bit lot, and that's just the farming side. Never mind forestry. And then on the urban side, we have a lot of problems there. For example, with old pipe networks, misconnections where the sewer maybe going into the wrong pipe, into the storm drain, or you might have combined pipes where you have a combined system. So we're working on all of that, and we're doing what's called nature-based solutions integration. So trying to slow the water from getting into these systems to protect those vulnerable, pipes, to protect the Irish water or the Ishgaren plants and so on. So all that's going on. So that'll all be mapped out. Now, in terms of Tipperary, and this is relevant, I suppose, to Tip, we have been working with Tip County Council, and this has come up in the council chamber, discussions around the Upper Shore in particular. So we have been working at developing a draft plan process there that's very specific to the Upper Shore. But that kind of a model, I see that as being a potential template that can be rolled out elsewhere. So a lot of what we do, because LawPro is based in Clonmel, that's our head office, we work with our colleagues in the county council and, let's say, Tip Co-op and everybody else around us. We do a lot of kind of pilots, and then we try and roll, because we're just where we are, it's kind of fortunate in a way, and then we develop and roll it out across the country. So what I'm saying is that in Tip, we're in a good, how Tip benefits maybe is probably a way to put it, in terms of having us there. And I'll give you another example. For example, with the Farming for Water EIP, we are doing work with the local farmers through the Farming for ERP to try and address giant hogweed, which is an invasive plant, a noxious weed, and we're doing that in the Carnahalia and the Toom area. So that's all pilots that we're doing, and we've got permission from the Department of Ag to look at the how we do it, to test this out. And if this is a successful model, well, then we'll roll that across the country, you know.
Okay. We're running out of time. I want to thank you ever so much, but just to remind the listeners again, this particular event is in Care House Hotel on the 12th of May, and it's from 7 o'clock to 8:30. Farmers and anybody with any kind of an interest, communities, etc., in the quality of our water in the Care, Cashel and
Kappa White area,
Kappa White area. It's particularly for you, and you'll find out a little bit more about what's happening in your municipal district. That, listeners, was Fran Igo from LawPro. Listeners, my next guest this morning is a Nuffield scholar. She is heavily involved in their big event, which is taking place later in the month of May, from around the middle of May, and there's going to be an awful lot of Nuffield scholars from other countries visiting us here in Ireland. She is Grania Dwyer, and she's the chair of Nuffield Ireland at the moment, and she was the first female Nuffield scholar in Ireland, and she hails from County Laois, and she's going to tell me all about the events that's going to happen later on in May. Good morning, Grania, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jim, for having me this morning. We're very excited. It's a huge undertaking for Nuffield Ireland, the Nuffield International Triennial, and we're very excited about it. So Nuffield Ireland is part of Nuffield International, which is a body of 8 countries around the world who have Nuffield scholarships. And every 3 years, they have a big international meeting. So this year in May, we are hosting the Nuffield International Triennial. It is starting on the 18th of May in Belfast, and we'll work our way down the country to finish in Cork on the 26th of the month. So it encompasses 30 farm walks, visits to agribusiness, research centres, and so forth around the country. And then on Friday, the 22nd of May, we have a conference or an agri-summit being held in the Killashee Hotel in Naas. Now, the event is sponsored by FBD, and we have a really interesting lineup of speakers speaking that day. The theme of the conference, which is the theme is Feed the World, Our Responsibility. So basically, we're looking at food security, and we're talking. So there'll be various components, are the challenges or the influences on food security. So we're very fortunate to have some high-profile speakers who some may not necessarily speak at these type of events. We're starting with Phil Hogan, former EU Commissioner, and he's looking at the global food security, the challenges for Europe and the world. And then we are setting the scene, looking at more production agriculture, and that is, there's a keynote speaker from the former FAO. He's retired now, but he's also a researcher. His name is Tassos Hanios. He's a researcher with the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis and is a special advisor on strategy for sustainability as part of the Forum for Future Agriculture. So he's setting the scene. And then we have a panel discussion. And taking part in that is our own Alan Matthews, from Trinity. Jim McCarthy, also a Nuffield scholar, one of our first Nuffield scholars who got his scholarship in 1996, and he's now farming. He's CEO of a farming company in Romania. And then we have Tig Buckley from the IFA, and Tig is talking about the challenges and the opportunities that this could provide for markets, etc. So that's more or less the morning session, and then we quite quickly move to the interview of Simon Coveney. And Simon will be talking about the geopolitical influences in around food security and what that means. And given the turmoil that's going on in the current geopolitical arena, this will be really interesting discussion. And speaking to Simon, an interesting fact is that around the world there are 120 million people living in camps, displacement camps. So that in itself tells a very stark story. So then the following session is we're then moving on from the geopolitical influence. Well, then there's the economic influence on that, and we have David McWilliams, and he will be talking about trade wars to food wars and managing that risk. And David wouldn't be well known on the agricultural sector of the conferences, the conference route. So he will be really interesting to see what perspective he brings to this, the whole food security. And then the last session for the conference is trying to define the next chapter. Where are we going? Okay, we've heard all this information in the morning and throughout the day, and then we hope the final session will bring all of that together. So we have a speaker from Copa Cogeca in Brussels. We have Francie Gorman, president of the IFA. We have Kylie Leonard, and she's a dairy farmer from New Zealand. She's also an Nuffield scholar, but she's on the stakeholders board of Fonterra. So she'll bring the Southern Hemisphere perspective on all of this, and to see what are they doing or what are their views in the Southern Hemisphere about food security. And then the conference closes with the Minister for Agriculture, Martin Hayden. So that's the program for the day. And then in the evening time, our gala dinner, our guest speaker is Lord Ivy, or Edward Guinness, Lord Ivy, in conversation with Sean O'Rourke. So that'll be a really interesting conversation. I would imagine it won't be all about the pint of Guinness. I would imagine he will bring the history of his family and some unknown facts about the contribution that Guinness has given to, in particular, their workforce in Dublin back in the 1800s when there were pension schemes and sick leave and so forth paid for. So it'll be really interesting to hear that story. And he will be in conversation with Sean O'Rourke, the broadcaster,
right,
and journalist. So that's the full day, Jim. I mean, it's open to everybody who is interested on the topic of food security. So the target audience would be farmers, those in policy, agribusiness, and anybody who has a general interest in this whole area. You can book the conference with the Triennial website. The website is Nuffield International Triennial 2026. So if you follow the links there, it'll take you to the registration and more details. I've only given you a very short synopsis of the day, but there will be more details on the website.
Okay, and I'm just looking at some of the other events that are happening during the week, not necessarily on the 22nd.
On the 22nd, yeah.
Not necessarily on the 22nd. We're looking at things like, you're going to the Ballydavin Dairy Calf to Beef Demonstration Farm in Ballydavin. That's at Chagas.
Yes, and Dawn Meats joint venture.
And you're going to Good Herdsman, the organic beef people as well.
That's right, and so each day the delegates can choose between three events or
Right.
three visits.
Right.
And they're broken down into pioneering innovations, which is the Ballyvidden Dairy Calf to Beast Farm, and
Yeah.
also the Good Herdsman. The other event on that day is under the heading of Cultivating Futures, and that's Brophy Produce in Naas, who are growing their mixed vegetables, and they're probably one of the few that are left in that whole area of growing vegetables and horticulture. And then in the afternoon, we're going to Coolmore Stud,
Right.
which
okay.
will be really interesting. And then the final event or farm walk on that day is under the heading of Enriching Communities. So they're going to Care Farmers Market. They're going to Contrastes Farm, the apple farm, and they're also going to Care Castle. So it's not just all about production agriculture. It's also showing the best of Irish agribusiness as well, and some of those niche people working in those kind of niche areas like the apple farm and the Good Herdsman. So
yeah.
it's across all of the Irish agriculture. It's not just the bigger dairy or beef units. It's also some of those other bespoke type of agricultural enterprises.
Okay, well, it's a full program, but it's some day, and you have some speakers on the 22nd, and I presume you'd like to see as many people interested in Irish agriculture, in sustainability, and in regeneration to attend that particular day in particular.
Yes, I think, Jim, it's probably, we don't see this discussion out in the open like this. We all talk about it and food security, but I mean, there hasn't really been a conference to date that I am aware of that is actually getting down into the challenges of it. And if we are to feed the world, well, then we need to do it, and we need to stand up and say, yes, we are a food producing country. While we can produce food for ourselves sustainably, well, we need possibly we have to have a conscience as well, and perhaps provide food for other parts of the less fortunate areas of the world. So look, I don't want to preempt the discussion, but it will be really interesting, and we would expect robust debate, because I think what some of the speakers will be presenting mightn't necessarily be the views of the room. So in true Nuffield fashion, taking leadership in this role in tackling possibly a difficult subject, or could be perceived to be a difficult subject.
Okay, well, look, for this morning, Grania, we'll leave it there. I want to thank you ever so much for joining us, and I wish you and your full team here in Ireland all the best for this triennial. And I'm quite sure, knowing how good Irish women are in particular at pulling things off, I'm quite sure it will be a resounding success.
Well, thank you very much, Jim, for your vote of confidence. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your best wishes also.
That, listeners, is AgriPort for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock. And after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.